The Mackenzie Gas Project proposes to build a 1,196-kilometer pipeline system along the Mackenzie Valley. It would link northern natural gas producing wells to southern markets. The main Mackenzie Valley pipeline would connect to an existing natural gas pipeline system in northwestern Alberta. The proposed project crosses 4 Aboriginal regions in Canada's Northwest Territories: the Inuvialuit Settlement Region, the Gwich'in Settlement Area, the Satu Settlement Area, and the Dehcho Territory. A short segment will be in northwestern Alberta near the Northwest Territory border. The natural gas exploration and development companies involved in the Mackenzie Gas Project have interests in 3 discovered natural gas fields in the Mackenzie Delta as well: Teglu, Parsons Lake, and Nihinglak. Together, they can supply about 800 million cubic feet per day of natural gas over the life of the project. Other companies exploring for natural gas in the north are also interested in using the pipeline. In total, as much as 1.2 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas could be available initially to move through the Mackenzie Valley pipeline. As of 2007, the planning, building, and operation of the proposed Mackenzie Valley project, estimated at $16 billion, will take cooperation among many different companies, communities, settlement regions, regulatory agencies, and governments. The proponents of the project include Imperial Oil Resources Ventures Limited, Mackenzie Valley Aboriginal Pipeline Limited Partnership, ConocoPhillips Canada, ExxonMobil Canada Properties, and Shell Canada. Our main interest in the project is due to how long it has been around. The original project has been around since between 1974 and 1978, when the original applications and permits to the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline were submitted and obtained. The project came about due to the energy crisis at the time, which inspired a search for alternate fuel sources. However, the project has yet to break ground since this time. Moreover, the Mackenzie Gas Project can be considered as groundbreaking. In 1974, the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline Inquiry, led by Justice Thomas Berger, set an international standard for critical cross-cultural public assessment of proposed development options. The Berger Report assumed a prominent place in Canadian environmental and resource policy. The Berger Inquiry went on to influence subsequent deliberations and practices in EA. It also created expectations of what an assessment process would be. Its most groundbreaking aspect is said to be in the extent to which it engaged potentially affected communities early in the planning process. Furthermore, it developed a framework of SIA, Social Impact Assessment. Our group assessed the EIS using the Lee Coley Assessment Review Package. In doing so, we gave the project an overall grade as well as grades for the 4 review areas outlined in the review package.
Section 1. I gave it an overall grade of an A. The description of the development, the local environment, and the baseline conditions in the EIS is done exceptionally well. The main strengths include the quality and quantity of work done, the thoroughness of the EIS, the maps and the renderings of the proposed developments. The main weakness of the EIS is that it is too large. The Mackenzie Gas Project consists of many developments, and one can easily get lost in which local environments and baseline conditions pertain to which developments. A separate EIA should have been completed for each development and organized differently. The amount of baseline data is overwhelming due to the immense area the project encompasses. In order to obtain effective and appropriate baseline data, they would have had to measure the baseline data for the whole Mackenzie Valley, and this was not done. The only main areas other than this that were lacking were the methods by which the quantities of residuals and waste were obtained, and this was not indicated, as well as the nature and quantities of raw materials that they used during the construction and operational phases. The baseline conditions in the EIS use a variety of data from field studies conducted from 2001 to 2004, as well as baseline data from the literature where it was available. Biophysical baseline data was collected for the environmental setting, which included air quality and noise, aquatic resources, terrestrial resources, as well as socio-economic baselines were collected. Overall, it is tough to criticize the EIS for its Area 1, as it only leaves out minor details in regards to the quantity of raw materials required, as well as some descriptions of the types of materials used, and these are just minor omissions. It does do a very good job at defining all of the biophysical aspects and baselines, as well as the socio-economic baselines in the project. They highlight the valued ecosystem components in this EIS. The biophysical valued components are air quality and climate, noise, aquatic resources, which includes groundwater, hydrology, water quality, fish and fish habitat, as well as terrestrial resources, which includes soils, landforms, permafrost, vegetation, and wildlife. The specific valued components are groundwater quantity and flow patterns, groundwater quality, water and sediment quality, vegetation types, vegetation communities of concern, rare plants, barren ground grizzly bears and caribou, woodland caribou, moose, marten, lynx, beaver, amphibians, birds, bowhead whales, ring seals, polar bears, beluga whales. There are also social and economic valley components like socioeconomics, traditional lifestyles and culture, land and resource use, human health, community wellness, and heritage resources.
Section 2. The proponent did well to identify a large variety of impacts based on input from public participation as well as knowledge of the project's operation. Key components considered in the baseline analysis are paired with a separate volume which details the predicted impacts on said key component. Predicted and potential impacts are compared to the baseline to determine their magnitude, direction, extent, and duration. Each of these volumes goes into appropriate detail, although it is not clear which impacts are considered of greater concern based on public or scientific reasoning. The EIA provides a volume for cumulative effects, but secondary effects are nowhere to be found, which is concerning. However, the proponent does well to consider impacts that could occur due to non-standard operating conditions and accidents. The methodology used to identify impacts is clearly stated in list form in each impact assessment volume. However, rationale for using this methodology is not clearly provided. While the methodology seems logical, it is important to provide the rationale for how things are done. The impact assessment volumes mention in several places that workshops and community-level meetings were used to determine key impacts, but it isn't always clear exactly where the information provided by these meetings was taken into good consideration. As stated before, it is unclear which impacts were of more concern. Moreover, the data provided in the impact assessment sections is appropriate and the methodology is mostly well described and rationalized, but levels of confidence are often missing. Guidelines used to determine significance are described, but the rationale for using them is often not provided. The EIA generally does a poor job in terms of assessing the significance of impacts. Significance is often only based on magnitude or guidelines, the use of which are not clearly rationalized. Additionally, conclusions on significance often did not link to public opinion, even in sections concerning the significance of impacts on socio-economic components. Oftentimes, significance of an impact was stated with little rationalization and statements that seemed oversimplified, something along the lines of, "The impacts of X are not significant." While the proponents considered a wide variety of impacts in great detail, omission in rationale and weak significance assessment resulted in a grade of D for Section 2 of the Lee-Colley assessment package.
In Section 3 of the Environmental Impact Statement, the proponents do an exceptional job at considering alternatives to the project. Various alternatives are considered in evaluating and selecting the preferred option to develop the project, including alternatives to the project as well as alternative means for the project. Alternatives to the project are considered at a broad conceptual level to explore the proposed options for developing anchor fields in the Mackenzie Delta and transporting the gas to southern markets. The environmental, social, and economic implications of each alternative are clearly presented under each subheading. After listing the project alternatives, the proponents follow by indicating why certain aspects cause the rejection of said alternatives, which included detailed reasoning. Occasionally, if any alternative is heavily debated, a meta-analysis is done to create an alternative to the alternative. A no-project alternative is also considered but is ruled out because of significant economic losses. Mitigation strategies for the alternative designs and processes are included for the project. However, evidence is not provided to prove the effectiveness of these hypothetical mitigation strategies, therefore lowering the grade of this section. Specific mitigation measures are put forward for every possible situation, and yet no considerations are given for their residual impacts. The proponents do a good job of making sure monitoring programs will be implemented to test the predictions and assumptions of the project and to provide feedback that will be used to modify construction and operational practices if necessary. Using the Lee-Colley grading process, I have given Section 3 of the Mackenzie Gas Project a C. Although certain parts are done exceptionally well and the proponents clearly go above and beyond with consultations as well as research alternatives, they fail to provide evidence of how their mitigation strategies would be successfully implemented. Without evidence, there is little credibility to their claims.
Section 4. Overall, for this section, I gave it a D. There are many issues with the communication of results in the EIS. The length of the EIS for the Mackenzie Gas Project was well over the length of a good EIS, and is estimated to be well over 3,000 pages. The EIS was poorly organized as well, and lumped all the different developments of the Mackenzie Gas Project together throughout the EIS, rather than organizing them as separate entities. This made it very hard to locate the different descriptions of biophysical impacts and baselines for each of the the developments. There was also a decent executive summary, which did a good job at attempting to summarize the whole report. However, overall, the data and general information was very hard to locate throughout the EIS due to its length and the number of different developments involved.
Overall, we concluded the Mackenzie Valley Pipeline's EIS merits a grade of D. While there are several components that were well executed, significant omissions and the sheer size of the documents are difficult to overlook. As a matter of principle, we cannot give a project a passing grade if it received a failing grade in any of the 4 sections. We would also like to add that the omission of this project's contribution to climate change, either throughout operation or when LNG is consumed, is extremely concerning. It is our view that this project should not pass simply on the basis that it is a long-term commitment to the use of fossil fuels and the emission of greenhouse gases. Currently, the project has yet to break ground. As of late 2013, the entire project was projected to cost at least $20 billion. The proponents have yet to begin construction due to unfavorable oil prices. In August of 2015, the proponents requested an extension to the sunset clause, seeking to push the deadline of construction commencement to 2022. A response to the request has yet to be received, and the fate of the project is unclear. After almost 40 years of continued impact assessments, one question emerges: when will the proponents give up?